All right. So here we are. What is it? It's Friday, September 6th, and this is Node.js tooling group meeting. We haven't met for a while. Needed to find a new meeting time, and so here we are. I've set it to, I think the first thing I want to go over is, and I don't even know if it's on the agenda, but the meeting time. So given the fact that at least some people are here, it can't be the worst time. But I was wondering about frequency, because we have the opportunity to do this every 2 weeks if we want to do it every 2 weeks. We were doing it every 3 weeks before. I part of me feels that, you know, maybe a more frequent meeting would be better, just to kind of keep everybody a little more engaged. Because I know, like, at the end of the 3 weeks, it just kind of tends to fall off, and I forget about stuff. So, what do you think? Is this doable every 2 weeks?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree that like every 2 weeks might kind of keep the momentum going a little better.
Yeah.
I think that works for me anyways.
Yeah, I'd be up for trying that out.
Okay.
Especially if it's the Friday, because my Fridays tend to be a little lighter than the rest of my week.
Yeah. I think we even have a no meeting Friday rule, apparently, in my department. So
Nice, get some meetings filled in there.
yeah. Okay, so we'll just keep going with that. So wanted to say congratulations to everybody involved in getting RimRaf working into core, and that's cool. And I still plan on writing something up kind of about it. Maybe even today. I might even do that today. I don't know. But yeah. Yay. So that is cool. And I think that's going to make a lot of people very pleased. Let's see here. So the big thing that it seemed to get a lot of attention the last week was glob support in core. So the idea is that I pose a question: do you think core should support globbing, or parsing of essentially what it would be you hand it a string, and that string is some sort of glob-like string, and the glob parsing thing goes and looks at the string and parses the string, and then tries to convert that to a list of files. There's the issue, I believe it was, what is the issue 38. It kind of goes over the main idea, which is you can use globs all you want in your scripts, but they are interpreted by your shell if you're on Linux, and if you're on Windows, they're not. And so you would have to pass those globs in as a string. And so that may mean single quotes or double quotes, depending on what platform you're on. And so you'd give it a string. And so all the command line tools that want to support globs have to pull in a globbing module and parse the damn thing themselves. And so it's pretty standard across, you know, most, I will say, widely used command line tools that operate on multiple files will try to support globs. And to do that, they have to pull in a module. And so given the kind of ubiquity of trying to parse these things, wouldn't it be nice if core had facilities to help people do this, just because it's essentially it's necessary for a good cross-platform experience in a lot of cases in CLI tools. And so there were quite a few people that chimed in on that post and agreed and said, yeah, this makes a lot of sense, because it's kind of a Um, it promotes cross-platform use of Node. There's statistics somewhere, and I don't know where, but I've heard of these statistics that say most developers are actually who are developing on Node are on Windows. Okay, and so you may deploy Node to Linux. Maybe that's the most popular place to do that, but you're doing your development on Windows, and so Node could do a whole lot more. Microsoft could do a whole lot more to make it a better experience, but you know, we can do what we can, and I think adding glob support is probably a good idea. And so I'd like to take kind of the temperature. What do people think? And I know many of you have kind of, you know, commented on that issue, but let's talk.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely commented on the issue and said I'm in favor of it. I think it makes sense to have something kind of basic like that in Node. I think there's like sort of two issues that you brought up though. One is like I wrote a Node script and I want to be able to parse a glob like string in there, but then the scripts in like package.json is sort of another issue, I think, right? Like that's more of like a like npm or yarn or something that's like running those scripts. I agree. It would be nice if globs work consistently in there across Windows and Mac and Linux. But I think that is maybe a trickier issue. But yeah, just the idea of having glob in core does seem appealing.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you have a script in your package.json and you want to use a glob in that script in the command line, if you don't quote it with strings, and if you don't, if the script you're trying to call does not have support for parsing globs, it's going to break on Windows, and that kind of sucks. It's just, I mean, it's kind of unavoidable. I mean, maybe it's not unavoidable. But it would take work on the CLI side, which is probably, you know, the npm CLI, which is probably breaking changes and terrible things, and probably trying to do too much. And I'm going to doubt that Isaac would want to do anything like that. So
it's kind of similar to like environment variables, right? Like cross-env, for example, is something that's widely used, but I don't know that you could actually include that in Node core.
That would be interesting. I mean, I'm happy to kind of brainstorm about how that could actually be done.
Yeah, I just mean like the problem with scripts specifically in package.json is like those like environment variables, globs, those are interpreted, expanded, whatever, before Node even gets started. It's like the shell that's doing that,
right?
Or via like npm or yarn or something, which is kind of unfortunate because those are some things that would be really nice to be able to fix.
Yeah,
like, I think regardless of that, even just having glob support in Node. So if I was writing, say, a command line tool or something, and I wanted to implement glob, not having to pull in a package would be nice.
Indeed. Ben, what do you think?
I don't have a super strong opinion. I'm kind of scratching, like, one thing that was a really nice fringe benefit of recursive McDir, and I think will be a nice fringe benefit of RimRaf, is that writing code for Node itself gets easier. Like, we can just, you know, when we're writing unit tests inside the Node code base, we know we have recursive McDir available to us, and so we can, you know, recursively make a directory. Now we can recursively remove it. So unit tests are nicer in Node core. I'm scratching my head. Haven't thought about this a ton, but I'm wondering, like, are there, do we unlock some nice little shortcuts and some nice things in Node core as a result of having glob built in? I don't know. I guess it's a much more complex feature than some of the stuff we've been working on so far. I'm definitely on the fence myself.
So Okay, so I guess to start, I would propose something like, let's just add a function or two to FS because that's what people want to see happen. But I mean, it's and I don't know if this would fly. Maybe because of performance reasons, or maybe it's behind an option or something. It would be neat if Node's built-in API had native support for globs. So if you were in the FS module and you were calling like read file or something, and you gave it a glob, it would give you back I don't know, an array of files or something like that. I think that would be cool. I don't think it's necessarily it may be a nice to have. I think there would probably be problems with getting that in.
Yeah, I think I'm certainly not opposed to it. I just think I'd be curious to see what path we're going down, because there's a lot of logic, I think, in the glob library. And I remember way back in the day, there's like micro match, and then there's mini match, I think is the other one. And there's actually both are incredibly popular, and there's some semantic differences between both glob implementations. So it's like we just need to kind of tread carefully and it's similar to like the CLI literature review you were doing. Like, what do we actually support?
Right.
I know Corey has a lot of opinions about this, who joined today specifically to talk about it. We can get some opinions from him.
Let's hear him.
Hi. So my opinions are primarily based on using actually both mini-match and glob in NYC. And for my use, there's a lot of edge cases with globbing. And I think for NYC to ever use the core functions, it would be important that we be able to access both the string matching function and the FS find. So for example, if mini-match were to be brought into the Node.js core as path.match and globbing be pulled in as, fs.find, then that would be something that obviously once it's available in the versions we support, that could be considered. But if the globbing function uses a matching function that we can't directly access, then NYC wouldn't be able to use it. Because we need the matching that happens through require to be the same as.
Oh, we just lost you. Can't really hear you, Corey. I don't know what happened.
I just lost your microphone, Corey. Sorry.
Sorry. Is this better? Sorry, I must put my finger over the mic.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what I was saying is for NYC, we have to perform string matching on the file name through the require hook. And we also need to perform path searching for implementing the all option. So in other words, it recurses the local directories and essentially finds all files that need coverage. And it would be important that both of those use the same underlying matching. So I guess kind of where I am with this proposal, I kind of think it would be good to look at implementing the path functionality first. And I'm saying the path functionality because I'm assuming that mini-match or whichever variant would end up being under the Node.js path module rather than the FS module.
Right, something like path.match.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. And then once path.match is implemented and kind of, the edge cases are spec'd out, then the fs.glob or fs.find, whatever it ends up being called, could be implemented where it actually uses the path.match.
I think that's pretty smart, and I think having a helper for matching a glob is probably less controversial than a big PR that adds globbing to all the FS methods right out of the gate. Even if that eventually
got to start somewhere.
Right. Yeah, no, I really like that idea. I like the idea of as kind of a first pass at this to add something like path.match, and just don't worry about FS for now, and just go with, okay, now we have the ability to match these files.
I think like an approach like that might be nice too, because you could potentially like pass your own, like if you weren't happy with the matcher that we had built in, just like with some of the other FS operations where you can pass your own like functions into it, you could pass like use this matcher instead or something.
You could also maybe follow remember, is it still the case that there's an fs.promises chained onto FS? Is that still how you get the promise API?
I think so, yeah.
So you could almost imagine you have like fs.globified or something, and suddenly all the methods have glob built into them, right?
That's an interesting idea, yeah.
So sorry, as far as mini match, I mean, as far as I know, the most popular one that does this type of thing is the mini match module. Ben, and you said something about there are different implementations that aren't quite the same. Are there concerns about which implementation we'd want to pick up, or if
there's there's mini match and micro match seem to be the two most popular, and they have almost exactly the same number of downloads per week.
Yeah, it's interesting
to make it extra confusing.
They grew out of like philosophical differences, if I recall, between Isaac and John. I think it was John. So there's like some. Isaac would be a good person to talk to. There's some reason the rift happened, and it might be worth us understanding why that rift happened.
Yeah, and they're literally like one is 14.4 million downloads and one is 14.3 million downloads.
Okay. It might be good to do an analysis of those two modules and see what the intersection is, right?
Yeah. And just to add my own comment to that, once the differences are identified, it would be nice if we could kind of look at, okay, like what differences can be eliminated through options. And in the end, it would be really nice if we could convince the users of Minimatch of both Minimatch and Micromatch to essentially look at those libraries as polyfills to the core functionality. Maybe even get patches in as a semver major to the matching function modules. That way, basically the latest semver major of those replicate the functionality that will eventually be in Node.js to kind of help with a migration path.
That makes sense to me.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understand so you want to ask, you don't want to ask the authors of these modules to do anything? Can you just restate that, please?
Yes. So let's say, for example, there's something, the implementation of path.match might have differences from mini-match and micro-match. I'd like to try and kind of coordinate with the authors of mini-match and micro-match and see if there's a way that we can get them to agree to basically do a semver major of their own module, so that the latest version of their module follows the same functionality as Node.js, and kind of try and eliminate the differences. And that way anybody using the latest version of those modules is more or less, I'd like to see it be kind of like a polyfill for the core functionality.
Right. So Yeah, regarding that, and I don't know where John and Isaac stand on this, but when we approached James Substack about which was it, McDerp, he was resistant to actually like stuffing the polyfill in there because it presents like another potential way for things to break for a user. And so if he doesn't polyfill, he has complete control over what the API looks like. If Node breaks something, then the users of his module will feel the pain. You know what I mean? And so I don't know, maybe polyfill. I mean, I think that's a reasonable concern. I don't think it's likely that Node tries not to break stuff like this, and so I kind of trust Node Core not to do that. But I mean, it's a reasonable concern, and yeah, I think going and asking those maintainers and saying, okay, well, we want to do this. Do you want to try to align or provide a superset on top of what Node Core does, or that sort of thing?
Yeah, I think just engaging both authors is a great idea, and like you say, maybe if I think Micromatch will continue wanting to do a couple things different than Minimatch, maybe. So maybe we can be like, why don't you just make your library those two different things, like you just said? And I think that would probably smooth over everything. So Minimatch will be a shim with one extra feature.
Does anyone know the intersection between what those modules are doing and what like Bash supports, for example? Because it seems to me like those modules actually provide more than Bash would. Maybe I'm wrong.
I don't know the answer to that. Maybe that's something that we should try to look into before like our next meeting, for example.
That sounds smart. I think there is a lack of specification for glob, which is where some of the disagreement comes from. I don't think it's working to some spec.
Yeah, you would think that there would be like a POSIX like spec or something maybe for it, but maybe there's not. But also probably worth looking into.
Yeah, because if there is, I can guarantee you somebody will bring it up.
Well, I can tell you that as far as Bash goes, at least on Fedora 30, Bash does not respect the double star. So if you run, say, ls space */**.js, that's the exact same thing as ls */**.js.
Even if you set sh opt x to glob or whatever it is, because it's like a flag you have to turn on.
Ah, okay. Wasn't aware of that, but ultimately it's not on by default if that's something that would work.
I don't know if it's on by default anywhere. It's like sh. I'll type it into the chat. It's something like that. That would be the thing you want to Google.
Yep. But as far as like, for example, like what actually works in a package.json for the scripts, I think the reasonable thing would be to assume that that's not enabled. For any author that's trying to put out a something that has scripts that are compatible with whatever system's running.
The README for Micromatch is actually kind of telling. I'm pasting it in here. They actually outline their specific differences between them and Minimatch and claim to be more compliant with Bash 4.3's globber.
Interesting. Okay. Well, so as far as action items, then I can go ahead and I'll see if I can just write up a comparison of these two let's say a comparison of micromatch, mini-match, and just whatever Bash supports. And I'll go with Bash because it's like the default shell. So and then I'll go ahead and I'll dump that comparison into the issue. And I can also write about let's try to start with the mini match stuff instead of just going right to fs.glob or what have you as a first step, and see what the other commenters think of that. So,
are we considering like writing a version of this in Node, or like vendoring or porting one of these existing modules, or do we not know yet?
I guess I don't know yet.
Okay. Part of the reason I ask is I think vendoring would be tricky because they both have two other dependencies.
I mean, it just kind of depends, like how much pain are we in for if we don't. Like how complex is this? And I don't know. I haven't looked at the source, so. I think that's something we can answer later. So. All right. So does anybody have anything else they want to talk on about globbing or micromatch or anything like that? All right. Let me look here at the.
Oh, sorry. Actually, just one. As far as different specs go, I don't know if this is necessarily a spec, but the ability to replicate the functionality of get ignore would probably be important. I know a couple of the modules support that.
Right. And so essentially, oh gosh, I guess I can look at that. I'll just add that to the list of things to look at. Because yeah, I know that tools have ignore files, and so they tend to base them on the get ignore stuff, and it would be neat if we could see what that supports as well. And what I can't be sure of is if the implementations or whatever that these modules are using are actually compatible with get ignore or just similar. That being said, like get ignore is not the end all be all of what an ignore. I mean, my opinion here is get ignore has room for improvement too. So, but it would be good to look and see what's supported in get ignore, and so I'll add that to the list. Okay, so next is, let's see, new meeting time. I guess we already did that one. Distributing CLI tools as self-contained binaries. I don't think there's anything going on there. Oh yeah, source map support. What happened here, Ben?
Yeah, I might have just stuck something in there. Agenda, sorry.
I was going to bring that one up. Did you put it in the notes or on?
I put it in the notes.
Okay. We should probably create an issue in tooling to maybe track that.
I think it's ready to land, so.
Yeah, I mean, there's already a PR and everything, so.
Yeah. It's kind of, is it okay if I talk about it right now? Or do you want to get through to the other things first?
No, go ahead.
I did like a super MVP build, which just basically detects a source map in the bottom of a source file, whether you've loaded it through ESM or through require hooks or through whatever. The nice thing is it's actually built in, so it doesn't have to see the source on disk. and it just plucks out the source map. If it looks like it's a file, it loads the file in for you. If it looks like it's a base64 encoded buffer, which is really common for inline source maps, it decodes it for you. Then it just places it in a cache of source maps that are resolved file names to the source files, or to the source map files. Then for this very simple MVP release, it just dumps those to disk for you at exit time if you're running with test coverage enabled. So it's basically just an extension to make it so Node's test coverage tools could actually support transpiled source code that's being done by TS Node or by like Babel Node or those things that are compiling on the fly, putting source maps in. My idea though was that if we could land that and get that kind of cache in place, then next steps would be we could expose a source map API that just lets you talk to that cache. So someone like writing other types of tooling could just be interacting with the cache and see what source maps have been loaded since they started up their application. And then kind of phase 3, I've been talking to folks on the V8 team, and I figure when we compile the code, we could pass those source map objects into the compilation step. And then when V8 has an exception, it could take those same source maps we're now already loading out of the source files and give you a proper stack trace instead of a incorrect stack trace when your program exits. So I'm kind of seeing it as like maybe 1, super simple, just piggyback on top of the test coverage stuff. 2, maybe start to open up the API. And then 3, maybe try to solve the stack trace issue, but working pretty closely with the V8 folks. And I think that would get us to a really cool place where Node works better for TypeScript and other transpiled languages.
I think I don't understand the difference between number 2 and number 3.
So number 2, I was picturing more like if you're Corey and you're writing, say, NYC, instead of grabbing stuff off a disk when the program exits, maybe you'd rather just have an API where you can say, hey, have we loaded any source maps into a cache? Can you just give that out to me in memory without having to have ever written them to disk? So it's for people writing stuff like Jest, who might want to let us kind of take care of loading the source maps for them and keeping track of the source maps so that they don't have to do that paperwork. So that was my thought. Like step 3 is kind of a completely different problem, which is that stack traces are wrong because code's transpiled and just Node stack traces are way off once you're using something like TypeScript. So it's more of a V8 integration issue.
Right, and so the scope of number 2 then is essentially like what, throwing another property on an error object that's thrown out of core, or?
Well, I was thinking, so right now the way we capture errors in Node is kind of janky. What basically happens is V8 has an exception occur. V8 reports that exception up to Node. Node takes that exception and then appends to the end of it a little pointer that points to source code position. So Node basically grabs the V8 exception and then kind of sprinkles some stuff on top of it. What I would like to see would be V8 handles the exception entirely, and Node's basically just reporting back what V8 has already done. Did we lose everyone?
Corey dropped.
I'm that exciting. So basically, I'd like to see V8 take on more responsibility, and what they've been suggesting is that they would show probably both the original source position and the transpiled source position, maybe somehow, because you kind of both are important. Like for someone debugging code, maybe you want to see the original source position, but if the exception is only happening in your transpiled code, you do need to see where that exception occurred. So it's probably a little bit more complex, kind of a hybrid error object that in the stack trace that gets printed in the terminal has a bit more information. And like you say, maybe it does have additional information on the error object as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes enough sense.
Basically, it would just make it easier to debug transpiled code at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think like number 3 is very appealing to me. Like my company writes pretty much 100% TypeScript. So anytime we see an exception in like a log file or error reporter. It's always, the stack trace is always compiled code. And being able to see, yeah, I think both, you're right, both are probably useful. But yeah, being able to see the original source in there as well would be very helpful.
And I mean, I'm coming at it from the test coverage point of view, and I just need that data to kind of remap. And since the source maps are added in at runtime, not at, they're not available on disk a lot of the time, I need someone to have plucked that source map off and kept track of it for me, essentially. Which we do with NYC by using require.extensions to see the code as it's about to be compiled. But that's actually a deprecated feature of Node, so we're not going to have that going forward. So it's like less janky because we're not kind of intercepting the compilation step, and it also addresses the fact that we deprecated that feature.
So it looks like, not talking about future changes, but it looks like this PR, what it is. So you set essentially an environment variable, and stuff will be written to a user-defined directory, and the stuff is a JSON file. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's almost the same as how we do coverage in Node right now. You get this, there's now a coverage file that has the JSON coverage data, and there's a source map JSON file that has the basically a lookup table of source maps.
Is there precedent for the latter? Or is this something like a new format?
This is a new format. So it is and it isn't. The source map format is based on a spec called source map v3. Sure.
Right.
So
But the mapping itself is,
the lookup table is a Benism. It's me basically saying like file to source map, file to source map, file to source map.
right.
And it's kind of like essentially the coverage feature is only half functional if you don't do that. So you can never really support transpiled code.
So is that mapping what you would like to see exposed as an API eventually rather than a file on disk?
Yeah, I think both would be reasonable. Like I think if you're indicated that you want to dump source information to disk, it seems like a reasonable thing to also get on disk, because then you can combine the two and have a proper coverage report. But if you don't want to dump stuff to disk, I think it would make sense for us to just expose it as a runtime API for other tooling authors, basically. And say like, is there a source map for foo.js? If so, give it to me. And then you get the source map revision 3 format.
So what's left to do on this?
Get review, I think, for the most part.
Looks like it's failing some build somewhere.
Yeah, I think that's I think it's not actually. I might rerun the test just to make it less confusing, but I think that's like a prior build failed.
All right. Well, I'll take a look, and I'll also review what I can of this, what makes sense to me anyway.
Yeah, that's a little weird. I guess I can try rerunning the Travis test. I don't know. Admittedly, like the writing of stuff to disk, so you know, it's a little bit of a kludge, but we're doing it for coverage already. You have to opt into it. Like if you're running with the coverage flag, you're already writing the coverage information to the same cache directory. So,
Mm-hmm.
to me, it seems reasonable. Like it's the same way there's some performance monitoring reports will output like a profile to disk too. Like we did in a few. We did in a few cases.
All right.
I think what will be really cool is we can use the exact same logic to make sure we load the source maps as we're actually creating that script. So that's kind of the end game.
Yeah. All right.
Cool.
Anything else on the source maps front we want to chat about?
No, I'm just excited about it. I think people don't know that it's a problem, but it is.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people know source maps are a problem. I for one would love to see like a reasonable stack trace one of these days.
Yeah, I think we can get there.
Yeah, especially I mean with like the popularity of like TypeScript, for example, in the last year or two, I think more and more people are feeling this pain.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So let's see what else is on the what is the thing to do the thing? Okay. So on the agenda, implement shutil in Node core. So yeah, we got rimraf in. I mean, the idea was that we wouldn't necessarily stop there. I mean, I feel like there's a lot on. I mean, I feel like there's a lot on my plate with all of the things I have to do. So I certainly am in no position to try to lead another effort to get, say, a copy tree or something in there. But is this still something that people? And this is kind of Raphael's thing, and I haven't seen him in a while. But is this still something people are interested in? Do we still think it's a good idea to try to add a couple more of these types of commands, like a copy tree?
I don't think it's a bad idea. I'm curious to let rimraf bake for a little bit, like see if it gets adoption, people use it. But slowly but surely adding it to you makes sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel like there's really as much urgency, I guess is maybe not the word I want to use, but to add more stuff. There's certainly some things that I think would be beneficial to add. But make derp and rimraf are really the big ones.
And those make like running tests so much easier. Like there's just those were just such smart low-hanging fruit, right?
Yeah. So I think I want to take that off the agenda and kind of table that for now.
I actually closed that issue.
Oh.
You're talking about number 23, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, I actually thought that was. I didn't realize that was. I thought it was only referring to rimraf. I didn't realize that it was broader than that. So I probably wouldn't have closed it.
You did good, Ian.
Don't feel so bad.
Well, I mean, I think maybe we should, rather than like a general like shutil issue, if there is some functionality that we want to implement, like copy tree or something like that, I think that should be sort of its own issue.
Sure. Okay, and then argument parsing. So I haven't had a chance to look at argument parsing. I mean, it's still something I would really like to see done. It's just kind of it's further down the list on things to do. I think Rebecca, who was interested in this, is busy with a new job or something, and she may not have much more interest in working on it. Rui, haven't seen him, but I know he was kind of interested in it as well. But I mean, if there's I don't know if anybody here is interested in working on that. It sounds like we all have our own things that we need to get done. I foresee more time to work on some implementation of stuff in Node Core after maybe next month, after October essentially. I'm kind of I'm pretty busy until then.
I'm excited about the command line argument parsing for Google because our samples, it would make our samples read better because we're dropping yards all over the place because we don't want people to have to install a dependency to run our samples. So if we had just a nice little built-in argument parser, it would just make those way cleaner. So I'm kind of excited about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I said like a month ago, like I was working on a tool for work and I needed to add a single command line option to it. And so, I mean, I ended up just like manually parsing like process.argv. But yeah, it would have been nice if there was, because that one argument then grows into two, and then you have a second one that takes like a value, and yeah.
I think honestly, like, I don't know, it would be interesting to see if we get like something like minimist or yards parser through, like trim it down a bit. But I wonder if we could just convince people that's almost a standard. Like that's probably like they're close to a de facto standard. They're both wildly popular. And I think the other, like you did the literature review, so we've done the work already.
Yeah.
Just implement your literature review parser.
Well, didn't Roy actually made like a PR, I think, or something?
Yeah, he did, right?
I think it was kind of like it was documentation, essentially an outline of what we want to see. I don't even remember. It's been so long since I looked at it. So
maybe we should try to dig that off again.
Should dig that up. And but again, I'm not going to have any time to look at this right away. So
yeah, I'm similarly slammed, unfortunately. One other thing I didn't put on the agenda because it's actually part of TC39 is I was thinking about putting the proposal forward for UUID for the next TC39 meeting. So this would be built-in UUID, which I brought up a few months ago. So
built into JavaScript. Yeah.
Which it's kind of an experiment to see if this sort of idea floats. A few other people have similar ideas. Doesn't mean we're getting UUID built into JavaScript in less than 15 years. But it might move fast too. Like some people are pretty excited about it. So at that point, I would want to immediately load it, get it into Node as well. So that'd be kind of cool.
I wonder. So I'm looking at MDN here. So gosh, what am I thinking of? So I went and I looked at encode URI component. It's not encode URI component. There's like some standard functions that do some random thing that are present in all browsers, but they're not part of the standard. I don't even remember what the hell I was thinking of. Maybe it was
like secure randomness is, I think, in most of the browsers, but isn't. I don't think it's specified.
Yeah.
Secure
unescape, maybe. Do not use unescape. Okay. All right. So this has already been taken. Do not use unescape to decode URIs. Use decode URI instead. All right. So that's what I was going to say. I was like, well, something like that might make sense as like a module. If it's like a thing that is omnipresent but not actually standardized. But then again, it's already been taken care of. So what do I know? I never even knew about decode URI. Anyway. Okay, so cool. Yeah, interesting. I'm interested to see where that modules stuff goes and UUID. I mean, I don't personally ever really use UUID for anything. Who is using UUID? What do they use it for?
It's great for rating unit tests if you need like kind of test data generated. You can use it certainly for like FedEx uses it for packages. Weirdly, like I've got a great post on this actually. We were doing a literature review as part of the paste it. We were doing a literature review as part of the proposal we've been pulling together, and one of the people who wrote UID is like happened to notice it was on their FedEx package while they were doing the literature review. Kind of funny. But it's you can use it for databases. You can use it for data unless it's like you can use it for tweets or something, right? Like you probably don't want to use it for your social security number because there is statistically a chance of a collision. It's like a collision. The odds of a collision are like if you're generating 10 million UIDs a second, it would take I think 150 years for you to have a 1% chance of a collision or something. Like it's in the trillions and trillions to have a collision. So.
Yeah, I know. I've been using the UUID node package recently in a few different projects. It is a handy thing to have sometimes.
Usually, I just start with 0 and then I keep adding 1. And I find that actually serves my purposes whenever I need to do anything like that.
It sometimes does.
If you're a distributed system, though, it's a problem, right? So
right.
This is a way that in a distributed system, you can guarantee you both haven't generated the same ID.
I do not distribute. All right. So awesome. All right. So I think we're just about out of time. So let's wrap it up. And
yeah, I was sorry. Just before we go, I was going to say we kind of brought up a few people like Raphael and Rebecca, Roy, who have been at the meetings in the past, and we kind of haven't had a meeting for a little while. So maybe we should make an effort to kind of let them know we have a new meeting time and sort of invite them back.
Yeah, let's do that.
That seems smart.
Let me write this down.
Even just maybe ping like the tooling on like Node Slack or the tooling Slack and just let people know about the new meeting times.
Okay, sounds good.
Cool. All right. Well, good to see you guys again. It's been a while.
Awesome. All right. Have a good weekend.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.